Welcome to Visibility by Design podcast with your host, Juliette Stapleton. In this show, I want to help you combine your marketing strategies and your human design potential so you can show up, stand out, and attract your perfect clients with confidence and ease. Are you ready? Enjoy the show. Hi guys, and welcome to Visibility by Design podcast. I am so excited today. Today is a very important conversation for anyone who wants to use human design for their marketing. And I have the perfect guest today. Let me introduce you to Yvette Mayers, all the way from Australia. So we're literally on the opposite sides of the globe. And Yvette is also a business and marketing expert, and she is using human design to guide her clients. And I think that we are here to talk about what matters. And
yes,
does it really matter for marketing and business what you're learning about your human design? Hi, Yvette. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for that beautiful introduction. And yes, I am on the other side of the world. I think we are literally poles apart, like time zone wise, but very kindred spirits in terms of our passions and backgrounds and skill sets. And I could talk to you for hours on end. So I know that this is going to be a lot of fun, and the topic is just very on point.
It's perfect for us.
It's a perfect topic. And it's also, there's a lot of room for interpretation. We were just saying that kind of offline, so to speak, that there's, I think even with human design in general, it's such an early stage in the full expression and interpretation, but especially so when you think about marketing specifically within that.
Yes, it's so true. And then you have to also consider that a lot of these wisdoms that we have, even the roots of human design, like I Ching, they came as revelations, and then they underwent like constant interpretation by people, and then there'd be someone who is more influential, so their word could spread a little bit more. That's before the internet. Obviously, we're talking about China and
an offline influencer.
Yes, no, that you see, this is it. Yeah. So if you're like an emperor or like a really big philosopher, then your word will be heard. But everybody has their own opinion. And I think that that's what's beautiful about us, because we sometimes can get another revelation and download and see things in a different light and then marry things together. And I think that's exactly what's happened to Ra and, and Richard Rudd and a lot of, key figures in human design. So we're here now, not to completely, cancel this, but see what we see as well. And I think that because it's a new thing, it's definitely a sort of a little bit of a bandwagon these days. I think especially in Australia, I can see so many in Australia. It's like, like wildfire, like spreading. The rest of the world as well. Even when I started, one of my coaches that I mentor, she said, I understand, Juliette, you like this human design, but like everybody's jumping on this bandwagon. And that created such a long imposter syndrome in me, because I didn't want to be one of those people. But yet there is definitely something to help with finding your direction, especially in marketing and online visibility in business. 100%. I personally am in this experiment for a year. My business has transformed completely, but my revenue has only grown. And that's, look at the fact.
It's a sign that it's it's a sign not just that it's popular, but that it's valuable, because it wouldn't be popular if people weren't gaining insight and direction, even if it's simply validation for something that they already knew.
Exactly.
And that's powerful.
It is very powerful, because it just allows you to be you and allows you to trust yourself. And that's the most important thing. I think especially both of us, we come from the marketing and business background and as coaches. And we know that, people don't trust themselves in general. They're looking for this magic solution. They're looking for you or me to tell them what to do. And sometimes you can see that there's complete release of your own direction. They're just tell me what to do. I just want just tell me like step by step how to get there. But I can't do this because you are a different energetic type. You're very unique. We need to explore how it will feel for you to do what I am doing. Maybe you won't be able, you know, if I was a manifesting generator, maybe I'd be just too much for you, you know, or maybe I'm too slow because I'm a projector and I'm slowing the hell down in my business, and that works. So it's so interesting. What is your own experience with this, with human design and your business?
It was the journey from my own human design experiment, from learning my design and then studying human design through to where I am today, has been long. So I didn't jump on the bandwagon. I put a toe in the water, and you know, that has been over the last 4 years, from toe in the water to diving in quite deeply so that I could do clients' charts, but not speaking very publicly about that. It was kind of something that I did on the back end. And sometimes, if I'm really honest, in isolation of the client, because I wanted to understand them better. So it wasn't even like, let me do your chart. It was like, this is coming up, I want to understand it better. Maybe if I go and look at in their chart, I'll be able to get a deeper, just a bit more depth around why they are the way that they are. And over the course of time, that was kind of happening in the background. And actually, the reason that human design has become so much more present in my business now, 4 years later, it started with me going through my own, what I would call, I wrote a post actually went live on Instagram with this whole revelation that I went through a bit of a breakdown in my business this year. I kind of came to a point where I had COVID at the time, by the way. And so I was in like, woe is me. Everything felt heavy and hard. And I had a bit of a moment of, do I even want my business? Like, is this worth it? It's really feeling heavy and hard. Some of that was real. Some of it was not being well. But I really came to the edge of my comfort around my business. And when I came out of that, I was more clear on one specific thing. And that was that I had been making, and you'll relate to this as a business coach, I'd been making the money that I made on a monthly basis be my measure of success. And I had an experience in my mastermind this year where I moved it into a membership model versus a kind of commitment upfront. And then every time somebody gave notice, I went through a little bit of a spiral, a shame spiral. And it really funked with my energy, is how I would put it. And so then I got COVID, and I came to this like, I'm all about feeling lit up and liberated, which we can get into because it's my design as well. And I came to this realization that after being sick and thinking about everything, I'm like, oh my God, I absolutely love what I do, but I've been in shame and I've been in not enoughness around this one element. And what I really need to get back to is doing the work because it lights me up, doing the work because I love being of service, doing the work because I'm freaking good at what I do and it makes a positive impact in the world. And so essentially I went through a period of realizing that I needed to embody my design, not just know it. And the more I did that, the more I came back to life, and everything in my business started to feel really different. And my clients in the mastermind, there's 5 of them at the moment, kind of were like, please, more on human design, more. And so then I kind of ran a big workshop on human design, and it was the most engaged, the like absolute best feedback on anything that I've done all year. And that was the beginning of me realizing that I'm a line 1 and I know a hell of a lot about human design. And it was time for me to kind of lean in and bring that more formally into my work versus this bolt on in the background. And it was this beautiful, like, sweet spot between me needing it myself and then the realization of how much power I could create within my clients, who once they received this, especially because every person's chart who I unpacked in those first couple of months that I began doing this more and more and more, I knew. And so it was like this blend of, I very much know them and their business and their personality, but when I combined that or fused it within human design intelligence, I was able to really get in and create big breakthroughs. So that's my human design journey. Yeah,
it's amazing. There's a couple of things that you mentioned that's really, you know, I got my splenic goosebumps, and that means that we need to talk about this. Number one, and this is a bigger one, and this is something that really fits into the topic. You know, what's important for marketing. And you just mentioned I had to stop focusing on these things that were triggering me, which were, it was shame, but it was around money as well. You know, it's all about, you know, somebody, and I've been through exactly the same situation when I had a membership model, when anyone, you know, even if I said commit for 6 months and they go after 3 months, they're like, and then line 1, which is my conscious line, of course, you need financial security with line 1, 100%. So you always get triggered. And even though you might be a billionaire, you will always get triggered. I think if you have that shadow, it's just something. And so that spirals into everything else, and, you know, feeling, you know, unworthy and all these kind of things. But what you just mentioned, you said, I decided to focus on what actually gives me joy or satisfaction. You're a generator. We never mentioned your design. So you're a 5-1 sacral generator. And so for you, joy in what you're doing is such a big signature feeling. And in a way, again, I'm getting these goosebumps as I'm saying this, because releasing, focusing on making money was the big one for me. Releasing.
Oh wow, you as well.
Huge, because the more I focus on money, the less I can get it. That's what I've learned. And I also have a completely open will center, so setting targets and all this, that's the way to kill my joy and my and for me as a projector, then it was all about, you know, feeling seen and recognized. So self-expression was something that I was leaning into as a signature feeling, because when I express myself and I see myself and I self-recognize myself, I feel very successful. Funnily enough, people like yourself found me on Google, and I, you know, because we worked together. So, you know, this is how, just focusing on that feeling, the signature feeling. And here's the dilemma in a way, because when you're reading a human design, it's very simplified. So, you know, I'm a projector, like focus on the feeling of success. And then you start thinking, oh, but how do I get success if I don't have clients, or if I, you know, if I don't know how to do it, what to do it.
Oh, this is a good topic.
Absolutely.
I mean, I wanted to actually ask you about that, because when I talk about success for somebody else, well, I would describe, for me, it's more important that I feel aligned than I make a certain amount of money. But how does that work for a projector when their feeling is success?
It's about, I really think that success is when you see yourself and others see you how you see yourself. This is a huge thing, because, you know, the recognition is very important for projector. But it's not the recognition for any kind of recognition. There's a lot of people recognize me for, I don't know, designing great websites, or, you know, something else they do, which is something that I can do as procrastination task, you know, tweaking, like, and playing with it, but it's not something that I feel fulfilled with. So it's important to really understand where you are getting that feeling of complete fulfillment and on purpose and seen and appreciated. And even when you're little, I call them cockroaches in your head, when they're saying, yeah, but you know, it was just a chat, they're paying you for chats. But the person on the other side hand says, you just literally opened the door and I thought there was a wall. That's big. That's what you do for others, because you can't see it as a projector. You can't see yourself. You have to rely on feedback of others. But when you feel that you're on purpose, when you feel like this is it, like, I know my thing is opening doors.
The feeling of success for you.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be anything even super specific, although there will be an area where you feel, even, you know, every time you feel amazing. But I know in my life, I'm a door opener. I was opening doors to people for live streaming. you know, somebody who never ever went live and only had business, you know, over a pint of beer before,
Yeah.
and now, you know, is interviewed on the national television about them live streaming on their page. I had this kind of success story with this businessman in I think he lived in Serbia, or he's from Serbia and lives in Slovenia, somewhere in the middle Europe. But it was amazing because he sends me 2 years later, you know, a picture of him on the national Serbian television, and he says,
Wow.
you did this. And so the opening doors, and I'm getting these goosebumps now, because this is what I do. For me, it took time to figure out, because there's too many, you know, feeling inadequate, feeling, you know, bitterness, resentment. You have to sift through that and find what really makes you happy. But then that's one thing, but the other thing as well is it's leaning into expressing yourself, feeling good first about yourself, not relying on them telling you, and then them telling you, supporting what you're trying to cultivate inside. That's success for a projector, I think.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that.
You're a 5-line, you're just getting that truth out of me.
Yeah.
Like, guys, this is other mechanics. These are the mechanics. Yeah, it's amazing. It really is amazing. Let's talk about, so one of the big things, just before we move on to the next thing, is that when you focus on making money, getting clients, you're actually sometimes not focusing on what gets you clients and makes you money in the first place. So find that whatever your signature feeling is, how can you achieve it? That's what you need to analyze. And this is something sometimes,
so important.
Yeah, we can, as coaches, and especially if we dabble in human design or know human design, we can help you move there, but it's up to you to really do that internal work.
And you know, I'm proof that you can learn all about it and still not fully embody it, because you know, we all have the not self or the shadow side of us, and the skeptic, right? Because anything metaphysical, quantum physics, it's no matter how spiritual you are, there is a small amount of skeptic, I think, in everybody, even if it's 1%.
Do you have the channel of doubt by any chance? I don't remember of the table of the.
No,
You don't. No, I do, because I am skeptical even by just by design. I agree. Maybe that's why I was holding back so long, you know, and didn't want to kind of come into the spiritual world, because it's very ungrounded sometimes, and you know, there's a lot of stigma with it as well. Yeah, that's an interesting observation. But you know what, let's talk about the marketing part as well, because one of the biggest questions, and I'm sure with you as well, is that how much do I need to know this human design? And you just said you can know it all but not use it. So, but how much matters is my question. How much matters? Because I find that when I guide clients, this is not, I don't need to go and learn gene keys and go into every little gate. Yes, it's very interesting. It's really, really interesting.
Yeah.
But does it actually matter for your marketing, for how you express yourself? You know, for I personally find that it's a nice to have. It's kind of like that depth you can add, but you have to master the basics. It's like learning a language. You will never be fluent if you skip the basics. You will never be fluent. It's impossible. You have to have the basics.
You have to have the basics. And at this point, and I know it's an ever unfolding rose, shall we say, but at this point, I really believe the profile lines have the most relevance.
I agree.
That's where I find the most resonance.
I agree with you. In my view, the basics of following your strategy and authority and really understanding these energetics is really important for your ease and flow. For your ease and flow. That's where the burnout is. And then when we come to marketing, and then there's twofold, like marketing and selling, you know, so profile lines, paramount to understand the mechanics of your profile lines, the conscious one with all the shadows, and then what do you need to lean more, the subconscious one, in order for you to be healthy and express yourself fully and attract those opportunities. So profile lines, that's where I think in terms of the for me personally, I'm a 1-3, so very self-absorbed. And
I love how you say that categorically, self-absorbed.
Oh, it took time. It's a process to admit these things, but you know what? And especially, I had a story. I think I talk about it when I talk about 1-3. I had once an argument with my mom. Things were good with my mom, and then they were not so good. And once she said to me, "You are so selfish. You only talk about yourself. I always listen to you all your life, and you never listen to me. You only talk about yourself." And it hurt. It for years, it hurt, that sort of, comment from your mother. And then human design came into my life, and I learned about the 1-3. And I understood that 1-3 is looking within. It's impossible for us. I read somewhere that we don't even see other people, we see the essence of other people. And I honestly, like, there's a lot of things that are blurry. There is a lot of things.
Interesting that you just said that, because you just brought to mind one of my clients who is also a 1-3, and you just brought to mind a conversation with her sharing that her brother, when she was younger, told her that she was selfish and how she can't seem to untether herself, but she is very self-absorbed in her process and in her work. It's just so interesting.
And it's a natural thing. So it's not like you can say to someone, hey, pay attention to other people. Well, you're not karmically here designed to pay attention to other people. At the same time, as a projector, I'm very, very good at paying attention to what matters. Again, to just the essence. I might not... Sometimes, all my family is 3-5. So they have the 5 line that's in the upper trigram, and that is focused always on other people. And there would be a conversation. They'd say, I met Yvette, she is amazing. And, she's doing this. And I see what's important maybe to me. And I will tell my husband about what was important. And he'd be like, okay, so what city does she live in? I'm like, I don't bloody know. I never asked this. I literally doesn't come to my mind to ask these kind of peripheral questions that are not as important.
Right into it.
Yes, exactly. And this is what this line 1-3 is. And when I learned that, it was so elevating and just really peaceful to release the trauma I had with my mom's comment, and to understand that my mom, who's a 3-5, could never get it that her daughter and everyone else in the family was 3-5, so they were okay, but I was all within. I was living in this bubble. They think I lived in the bubble because we had a dysfunctional family. No, that's just the bubble of 1-3.
It's just how I'm designed.
Exactly. And so how do we bring this into marketing? If you're 1-3 and you're listening to this and you karmically designed to look within, why? Because you are analyzing everything. It's a very intellectual process. Line 1 is a very intellectual line. So you're constantly processing this information, and then you're coming out with the essence. So you're processing it for the others. Give yourself some credit about the amount of processing power that you have. You're like a supercomputer, where the other ones are just like maybe like MacBook Air or something, so you have to always allow yourself this credit that you Google, anyone with line 1, you Google faster than anyone, and you get to the information faster than anyone, because you just know you develop this, and you're here to share this. And then you will share the essence, your own unique perspective, which is a great thing. So you're not here to tell people what to do as a general thing. That's actually a line 5 thing. Just tell them what to do, give them the system, give them the path, and they will walk the path. No, you're here to say, I see this. This is what I see. The moment I started embracing this in my blogging, and I always naturally kind of leaned into that, because you can't help it, right? You just
it's just how you are, right?
Yeah.
I'll tell you something funny. My unconscious line is the line 1, but through my entire life, if anybody was like not trusting their partner or something that was going on and they wanted an answer, I found the answer. Always.
Wow.
Yeah, and I often used to say, if I wasn't in marketing, I'd be a private investigator. Well, before amazing. I knew about human design. Yeah,
you have a nose for the bottom line. What is actually happening?
Figuring it out.
Yeah, and looking at the right, like what matters. So not getting distracted. Yes, we're going through so much detail, but we're not, distracted with something else.
We're getting to the answer.
Here's a fun fact. So in the last year, when I slowed down in my business, stopped telling people what to do, and literally just poured everything I had into self-expression through my blog, especially through my blog, a little bit through my podcast. But in my blog, the biggest article that gets probably on average 5,000 hits every month is the article about 5-1s. It's called The Secrets of 5-1 Profile.
Oh,
And I get tons of clients for the marketing blueprint by design from that who are 5-1s. And the funny thing is that I always survey, where did you find me? Because I'm very visual. I have a Trello board. Everyone who comes in, I have a Trello, and I have these little stickers, Google, and that never happened to me. It never happened to me. Yes, they called me the queen of visibility, and it was all like consistency. But it's only when I leaned into what actually is natural, which is talking about what I see. Even if I see, half of that article is about my family. Half of that article is not at all about, there is no practical advice there.
That's
and yet
so great.
it makes people feel seen, I think. And therefore there is this next level, and I love working with 5-1s. It's one of my favorite profiles. It's just really, really interesting to me. So but what I'm trying to describe here is that how do you lean into this? So if you have a 5-1 profile like you, what is your experience into leaning into the profile?
Yeah, well, what I would say first, and I think I may have even learnt this from you, I don't know, but it's really the combination of the two profile lines. The conscious one is the one that you're very aware of, right? But then it's the second line that actually adds the magnetism, because it's almost like this unique blend. And yeah, there's 12, so it's not so unique, but it just feels so right when you start to look at things through this perspective. So for me, as a 5-1, it's kind of this beautiful combination of being able to spot the bigger picture, but then having this incredible depth, because you cannot help yourself but get to the bottom of the bottom of the bottom. So when you share from that place, you're sharing very powerful insight, but in a solution for the world way. So I kind of think that the 5-1 has more right than anyone to sort of tell people how things work. This is how it works, with authority.
I actually think that you're right. And I think that this is why there's so many 5-1 politicians, because they have the research and the depths and the understanding, and they learn, especially, we were not going to talk about what happens to them when they sometimes get seduced by, their own power, or the projections, like Putin and Hitler. But let's talk about the early days, and in the early days, there's so much knowledge that they bring. There's so much understanding, looking really deep and looking at the essence, like where is the problem? And then trying to find a very practical solution. What can we do now with this? And I really see, because it's very different from, for example, 5-2s. How 5-2s express. It's still about people, and it's still about giving some sort of solutions, and and they're quite practical. One of the wonderful clients that I had honor to work 5-2, she draws political cartoons. So it's like a very different way of expressing yourself and conditioning other people through highlighting the truth here. And so this is so interesting, that it's very different. And yes, the second line is very different. Line 2 is very different from line 1.
Very different. Yeah.
And it's interesting how you say, so the more you lean into the depths, don't be afraid to lean into the depths, because you naturally will give the practical solutions. And it has to be practical for you as well. That's, I think, what the line 5 danger is, when you maybe don't have a boundary where this is what I can do, but this is like, this is your own fantasies going on here. This is I'm not going to do this, because this is not what I'm promising.
So much certainty, but it's this combination with the one of, well, I'm not making this up.
Yes, I totally agree. And what do you think? Can we give some practical advice to people who don't have our profiles lines? Because, I think, is there a profile? Here's a trick question. Is there a profile in your life, amongst your clients, that you tend to attract that is completely different to yours and doesn't have line 1 or?
Absolutely. I have so many clients with the line 4, so many.
Amazing. Let's talk about this. I love it.
Yeah. And I think, they're very gifted and influential within their social circle versus broadcast. And it's really helped, it's helped me guide them with their marketing to do more of what they want to do, right? So they're more drawn to maybe release a podcast, where they're going to build intimate relationships with a small group. So they may have worked with other coaches who discouraged them from launching a podcast and gave them all sorts of rationale as to why it's not the right move. It's a very competitive marketplace, takes time and a lot of effort to expand the reach. And they have this strong desire to launch a podcast. And then they come to work with me, and through the lens of human design, particularly, I mean, also, I think in general, follow the thing that you really want to do, and it's going to work for you. But as a line 4, I'm like, absolutely launch a podcast. Because for you, it's all about growing your influence with a closer network. So it doesn't matter if 20 people download your episode. If the same 20 people consistently download an episode over a period of time, they're going to be so in your vortex because you have this gift.
I love this. And I have something to add, if you don't mind, to this, because it's, if you're line 4 listening to this, and you're saying, yeah, but I don't understand this. What does it mean, like, influence my network? Or what does it mean, influence? But the truth is that strangers don't see you.
Mm-hmm.
You're not someone who can be an authority, for example, like line 5, where a stranger sees, immediately gets into this, being conditioned with this magnetism, and doesn't matter that they don't know. It's like, wow, and the projection starts, and it's like, wow, this is amazing. You don't have that energy. And so how do you do this? You need to bring a person from a stranger to someone who kind of knows you, and we're living in the perfect timing for that. You just need to get this person to listen to you or look at you, right? So 100%. Exactly what you said. This is what some coaches, they think about, running a podcast. If you want to be a podcaster, if you want to worry about how many people download and all that, but you don't have to create a podcast for that reason. So even if there's 2 people downloaded your podcast every month, it doesn't matter. Yeah. At all. I always say to people, this is vanity metric that is just clogging your mind. Stop it. It's about you creating quality content that can, for years to come, help you position yourself from that stranger to someone that they know. It's enough to listen to you for 20 minutes to feel like they know you, or especially with video. Video transcends this.
Yeah, even more. But the thing about audio in the podcast format is, you're almost always listening to it one-on-one. Yes. So you're not listening to a podcast and then there's someone, like a child, sitting next to you that's interrupting you. You're generally not. You're in the car or you're walking. It's a very intimate space when it comes to this. And that's why I think it's such a fast journey from I don't know who you are to I get you.
Oh yeah, and I want more of you, and sometimes it takes a few minutes, because when and line 4 has a fixed kind of voice, this quality in the fixed voice, like, so it's really, there's so much conviction when you really know or believe into something. When you have basically an opinion, it's going to come across in a very fixed way. So take advantage of that. That means that when you are, if you are doing your messaging right, so you know what you're talking about, you have your offer, you created, you know who you're talking to, then that conviction will very quickly bring them from complete strangers into getting to know you. But by the way, I don't have line 4 in my at least in my profile, right? But I created an online show, and I did it twice a week in the beginning, and in half a year I positioned myself from absolute nobody to what they called the queen of visibility. It only took 6 months. 6 months is nothing. You can sit on your hands for 6 months, because this is where you position, especially with interviews, you're in this conversation, but people are watching you, and maybe your guests are changing if you do interviews, but you are there, and they fall in love with you because they kind of get to appreciate you in your quirks and things that you don't necessarily control, and the way you are. Yeah, and it's good, let go of that control, let go of that being perfect, let go of especially for line 4, let go of trying to be liked.
That's so true.
Just be yourself in a way, and
you're going to be the right person for the right audience always.
Exactly. And it really, I talk to so many, especially 2-4s, poor things, because they, they don't want to be out there, waving their flags, and they shouldn't do this.
It's almost one of the more difficult profiles, isn't it? Because of this, because of the 2 being the more conscious, even though they have this friendly, warm disposition at the same time, it's like conflicting energy. But I think that giving them this permission to be, you have these natural gifts. Like, even if you don't always believe that you have the natural gifts, we see them and we want more of you. Exactly. And therefore, please step into the limelight in some form so that you can share these gifts.
100%. And you know what? You don't want to meet people for coffee chats because, sometimes, and even in the beginning, I was saying, okay, if you're 4, how do you move people? Just, get them on coffee chats on Zoom. I particularly don't like it. I find that if there's no agenda, like, for example, a client call or something, a podcast, I feel like it's a bit of a waste of time because networking is not in my, nature.
Yeah. So
some people with 2-4 profile might feel the same. They don't want to be networking as much. They're really nice and, people sort of see them always. They're always very likable like that, but they don't want to network. But you don't have to. Instead, use a podcast, and there's some wonderful, like I use Anchor. Anchor is free to start with. It has an amazing app that you can lie in your bed, right? No makeup and PJs, and you have an opinion, and you can just talk into your phone and express it without thinking. It's the same thing what you, Yvette, said in the beginning about focusing on money, when we were saying that, focus on your joy, focus on expression, lean into your energetics, express yourself, put it out there. But then let's think about it in a bigger way, because, a lot of people say, yeah, but, the downloads, the monthly, and, it's so much energy to build this. It's not about the podcast. It's about a piece of content that you're creating that you can send people to. So, for example, this is a conversation about what matters in marketing and how we can use this. We started talking about the lines, but maybe a couple more things we will touch on. If somebody asks me, Juliette, what's important for how much do I need to know about human design? I can just send them to this podcast episode. Absolutely. So we're creating a content library where we can send people to a specific one and answer the questions, so our time and energy is freed, right? B, we're creating somewhere where they can binge. We're literally creating like Juliette's Netflix or Yvette's Netflix for them. And so they don't.
I'm sure you're the same, but like, I have a podcast that's been running for 3 years and it does not have huge numbers at all. But if I look back over my client roster in that time, so many of my clients, if they've either come from binging on my show first, or, perhaps they've heard me on somebody else's podcast and then come into my podcast and binged my podcast first, or they come in and then they start binging my podcast and it just deepens the relationship. It is very valuable regardless of whatever the vanity metrics say.
Yeah, so it's about how to see it. It's the same with YouTube channel. A lot of people are like, oh, but statistics, how am I going to, go to my first 1,000 subscribers? But you're not here. Your goal is not to monetize from YouTube, your YouTube channel necessarily, right? You're a coach maybe, and your goal is different. Don't forget what your goal is. What are you doing there? You're creating something that you can send people to binge on. And you know what else? My advice, don't send them to a YouTube channel. Embed those videos on your website, into your blogs, even if it's just a vlog article, because I'm going to write this. I'm writing a book, and one of the chapters will be called Puppy Always Wins. Because when you're on Facebook or if you're on YouTube, there's going to be something in the corner of your eye that will distract you and your brain will go there.
Totally.
I watch serious trainings on YouTube, and there's Saturday Night Live channel starts, it's like, Juliette, your brain needs to rest and you need a nice belly laugh. And that's it. My attention is gone. So it's important to keep a bigger picture here with your goals and what are you trying to get out of this. And I do think that when you focus on, this is the content library, this is
I love that.
This is more important than growing that platform. And you actually will then focus on yourself, right? Even if you're not self-absorbed, on your joy, on your success. You focus on yourself in any kind of sense, whatever makes sense to you, and you express yourself in such a magnetic way. I recently had a client call with a wonderful lady. She was a 1-3 like me, but she wrote a book, and she said, all my clients come from this book, and everything else I do, it just doesn't work. And I don't understand. I wrote this book not for business. I wrote this book for me.
Yeah.
And it literally speaks for itself.
Wow, that's so cool.
Focus on that signature feeling and forget for that moment, just for that moment, like release your insecurities, especially financial and getting clients and everything, because that just puts us into, wrong.
The other thing that I've observed with my clients is the online business world, I'm just going to say it, can be a bit culty. Like it's like one version of success. And I have a lot of clients that come to me that are trying to discount or discredit other types of impact that they're having. So if they're doing something in person when they first arrive, they really want to hurry up and stop doing that thing so that they can grow their online business. And in a lot of instances in our work together, they do the opposite because they're trying to remove themselves from something that they actually really enjoy because they've decided to chase success on somebody else's terms.
Yeah, because somebody else said it's so easy, like, or not said, but maybe gave them an impression that it is so easy. I grew this 7-figure business in just 3 months, and you can do too. Just follow my steps. And they're like, yeah, because you know what, feels like hard work what I'm doing, and they're forgetting, literally, like amnesia happened, and they forget how much satisfaction they're getting out of this work.
Oh my God. So true. And then they also discover that it is smoke and mirrors. It's not easy to build an online business.
Yeah, no, it's not. No, it's not at all. And really, anyone who promises you something faster, or something doesn't feel right, say for example, you don't even know what your offer is, and they say, focus on the 10K months. Hang on a second, hold your horses. Have you made a 1K month? Have you made a 2K month? And it's not so simple. There's so much discourse. There's so much people are trying to make money. And of course, and we might talk about this a little bit now before we wrap up. It's about feeding into your insecurities, right? What we call human design, 100%. We call it not self.
Yeah.
And here's the truth. And this is how much you need to know about human design. You really understand what's your not self, right? Because where you are aligned, you don't need anything. Alignment means you're content with who you are and where you are and how you are. Alignment.
And you don't generally go on any sort of self-discovery process because it just
you've
is.
Arrived. Yeah, you've arrived. That's it. You don't like where you're aligned. You're so cool. You don't need to be better or more or anything, but marketing and any business is about helping people transform or get more or get better or look better or feel better or be richer. So more, and that comes from this not self. So with understanding your not self, that's where you can really tap into what you can do for people, and how you yourself as well evolve. And it's very interesting. So the brand and the brand voice, where we're expressing ourselves, that's definitely profile lines.
Yeah.
Like, how should I express myself? What sort of ways, a podcast, if you line for, well, actually podcast works for many lines, but you have to understand why you are doing this specific thing. And then we have like, what sells? So before we started recording this, we went into like a real deep rabbit hole with our line ones about selling from your open space. And Yvette, you said a couple of things like that were very interesting. Why did you feel the openness really helps? So I'd love you to kind of talk about this.
So I was sort of explaining as well that I have a lot of open space. In fact, I've only got 2 centers defined. They're linked by an unconscious line. So I would say I'm a confusing person to live as, because I'm influenced by everybody around me, and I have so much not self to work with. And, there's certainty in my sacral. Yes. Energizer bunny. Absolutely. And in my identity center as well. So I never question my path. I don't, like, that's just like, I'm going in the direction. I know, I'm certain this is all good. But everything else is open for debate. And so there's a lot of doing the work on myself in all of the things, like all of those areas, every not self, when you read them and you're like, oh, well, at least I don't have that one. Shed a tear for me, because I do. I have them all open pretty much. But it's been interesting to really think about, as a marketer, that also means that I authentically go through the process. I don't teach from a defined center where it just is. I teach from I get this because I work with this too. And I think that's a very relatable messaging type versus I just know.
You know, it's so what you said about your identity center and the direction. So definitely, how can I come to you and say that I don't know, I don't feel like I have this set direction. So many things are pulling me, you know, in all directions. But you literally can't relate to that because it's not something you've experienced.
I will say, go and do Finding Your Why.
Yeah, or something, you know, and it's interesting.
Yeah, like, you know, if you basically what I'm saying is I will outsource that.
And it's really, really interesting because that's what we can do with, you know, with some of the energies. And yes, of course, we tap into, so for example, maybe after this, we're recording this and I'm maybe tapping into that sense of direction that you have and lovability and, you know, no questioning this. But in my real life, I'm a chameleon. I have an open G center. You know, I need to change my furniture every so often because, you know, I just like, I need to change the environment and there's loads of different things that come with this. And my life would be so much like complete U-turns and things like that, that you wouldn't say that it goes into in one direction necessarily.
Yeah.
And so, and it's interesting, I have a defined spleen, so I can't teach trust your journey. I always say that, but I feel like I don't know how it is not to trust your journey. I really don't.
This is the thing. And I think this is a really fascinating part. Well,
Yeah.
It's certainly different to explore.
And here's something that as a projector, as I mentioned, we don't see ourselves. So I observe other people. I have an open spleen, completely open, no activation. And when I talk about being open to receive, that you're not here to go get, you're being open. I see people's faces, regardless of their even design, they change and relax and they're like, yes. So and that made me, before I even started looking into this, that made me think a lot about, is it actually something that's much more magnetic in terms of what you're selling here? Because, you know, in my marketing message, this is pretty much, it's like, find the harmony, like rest into this, slow down to accelerate.
Yeah, because you're projector energy.
Stop focusing on the money, stop focusing, don't set goals, just make this.
Yeah,
just for yourself. And it's interesting. So what you said then, we were talking about the relatability. What do you think with all your openness is the most magnetic with you, that people maybe you find that
I actually think it's my intuition, which they don't necessarily realize is what's magnetic, but because of all of the open space, and I'm wide open in the solar plexus. I've got a lot of gates activated, actually. I've got a completely open will center, though. No gates activated. But big picture, I'm like, you said you're a chameleon, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm the ultimate shapeshifter, because I am so in response to other people's energy that I change who I am without consciously doing it. And the way they experience that is, oh my God, you are so intuitive. And I'm like, that's not on purpose.
That's your undefined spleen as well, probably, with the, you know, being just open and sampling everything. And whereas I find that defined spleen is not, its intuition is massive, but it's not, it just works in a very, very set ways.
Well, it's intuition for self versus than other, maybe a little bit more.
Well, you know, goosebumps I keep mentioning. Sometimes
Yeah.
the client will say something and I get goosebumps, and it's something that is aligned for them. There
Yeah.
is this weird
Yeah.
thing, but I think it works in just one. It kind of works in one way, and it's very set in its. That's what I find when I'm reading about the defined centers being fixed, and I'm looking at, I have a head and ajna and spleen and throat. There is this fixed thing that there's nothing I can do to change it. It's just this one way. Whereas where I'm open, I can be very, very different in these ways, and maybe through that, then, for example, an open G center, maybe through that, it's very easy to see other people's direction or lack of direction, and talk about, embracing and not being set on trying to find the direction. That's speaking directly to the non-self.
Yeah, I know. And this is the truth, right? Because let's talk about the will center. If you're somebody who is defined, who has never struggled with self-worth or needing to prove yourself, are you good at teaching somebody else how to do that?
Exactly.
No.
Exactly.
You're just like, why don't you get this? You were born worthy.
But it's interesting because, you still, if you have a defined will center, for example, you are created, you are designed to set targets, and with your willpower, access to that willpower, achieve your goals, right? I have some wonderful people I'm connected to, who are with defined will. It's even their authority, and I can just literally see, like, they would be saying something like, oh, I'm going to start this. 2 months later, they've built an empire. This is something they can do, right? And they set and they give themselves a deadline, and they can do that. So working with a coach like that definitely activates you while you're with them a little bit into that. So this is something we can use in our offers and things like that.
Oh, completely. Yeah, but there's no black and white.
Exactly. But selling that to me would be very difficult for them, because, I know if you say to me, and that's what happened, the big story I had of my burnout, when the sales coach said to me, okay, you have 1 week. I want you to get 5 clients at $2,000. So make $10,000 in 1 week. And not only I didn't make it, I didn't do anything. I literally didn't lift a finger for this, because I got paralyzed by the target. And I can't do this, I have to do it completely different way. It doesn't mean that I didn't have a 10K a week or even a day. It doesn't mean that, because it all happened differently. It's just this mechanics. So you can't actually sell this idea with that fixed energy, because it can be sometimes detrimental to another person's health, mental health and energy health. Yes. And so going back, like if there is an open will center, you but it just works differently, and you can talk about your journey. You can. So I can talk about the journey. Why am I saying, focus on receiving abundance when I'm like financially triggered with the insecurities and everything? But because I go, and you would probably relate with all the openness, because you go through the journey of understanding things, deconditioning, being affected by others, and then, seeing that this is not yours. Sometimes it doesn't happen immediately either. It takes a while to understand that you're actually influenced by someone. My husband has a defined route. I don't. If he sits near me and I'm doing something, I'm always feeling like under pressure. I always feel stressed.
Wow, that's so fascinating.
And I need to have my own timeline, even if I do things quickly. So and it's yours. Like understanding that this is not mine, understanding that maybe I need to send him to another room if I'm doing something important, that I need to focus on staying in my lane and things like that. These are important things, so understanding then, for example, what is it to work under stress with an open root center? What is it to push yourself to a deadline? Do you need a deadline? How to approach these things? How did I approach? So leaning into your energy of your own. Do you talk about it as who you do, or what you tell other people to do, or how do you express this? And I think that becomes really, really magnetic, selling from the open space, and looking into not self questions for the open centers are perfect for you.
I love it for journaling, but I also love it for thinking about content.
I think that, we are talking a lot about these things, but there's still the trust issue is always going to be an issue with people. Trusting yourself, trusting yourself to be yourself is the hardest thing that some people can have in marketing especially. And it's even, I believe that people who have, maybe you resonate. Here's a question directly to you, because you have a defined G center and you have the sense of direction, right? But when you come online, when you started your online business and there's this fire hose of information and advice and everything, do you still stick to what you believe inside, or do you get conditioned temporarily maybe and confused maybe, because it's not only about the G center, right? It could be just confusion in your head and things like that. What was your experience with this? Did it
total
derail
confusion? Okay, so for me, the sense of direction is, I don't know how, but I will make this work and I will not fail because this is my destiny.
Got it. But yet
it's not the how. The how
it's
is
not
confusing.
the how. Yes. Yeah, and this is something that, when we discuss something, we say, okay, you have a line 4, think about, cropping out parts of your coaching calls. Maybe if you're recording the speaker view on Zoom and they don't, for the privacy, your client can be seen, and put them out as a piece of contents, because you're going to be in your, if you're 2-4, for example, you're going to be in your zone. You're going to be doing what you're doing naturally so well, and let us watch it. So we want that in our lives as well. So it's a very simple kind of solution to this. But sometimes, it's about trusting yourself to say, you know what, I'm going to do this. I don't need to overthink. I don't need to now look at all my every gate I have before I can start doing something in my marketing. I call this episode, does it really matter, or does it matter in your marketing?
Yeah.
So understand your energetics and understand your profile. The rest you can add to that. You can add to your depths.
I think it doesn't really matter. You can have success without it, let's be honest.
Totally,
so,
yes.
Yeah, so no, depending on who you are, it doesn't really matter. But the opportunity to make your life and business so much more pleasurable
and easier
and simple,
yes,
is available. So it is absolutely worth experimenting with.
Absolutely. I so agree. Oh, Yvette, thank you so much for this wonderful time. Where can our audience follow you, or do you have anything that
I follow me on Instagram. I'm sure you'll be able to put it in the show notes. My name's Yvette Mayer. It's at Yvette Mayer _ on Instagram. I have a podcast as well, which I'm going to get Juliette onto shortly, which is the Lit Up and Liberated Entrepreneur. Completely came up with that well before I was studying human design. So very on brand.
That's the natural thing. We're always naturally, deep down, we always know. All this is just.
I'm like, when I read my profile, it's like, how did I create a brand that looks like I created it because of my human design? Anyway, so that's how you can find me. That's enough.
Wonderful. Again, thank you so much for today, guys. Reach out to Yvette, follow her on Instagram. She's so vibrant. She's just like, Joy is literally should be middle name, because I love her style. And so her Instagram is brilliant. I am not on Instagram for business. I'm there just to look at people I love. And so she's
fair enough.
Yes.
Fair enough.
And I hope you're going to join me. And guys, I will see you in the next episode of Visibility by Design.